3, 2. Pechakucha, Knoxville, Volume 50. Local historian Jack Neely told me that there are two great surprises in 21st century Knoxville, and that they're Big Ears and Pechakucha. This movement is special. It is ideas and it is people. It is a place and time, and yet there's something transcendent about these moments. A friend meaning to poke fun at us described the night as mental masturbation. If that means tonight is an orgasm of ideas, let's get it on. That's me in 2011 presenting at the third Pechakucha, exploring contemporary Chinese art with a talk about the Enlightenment. It was called Thoughts Rational and Sensuous on Modernity. Pechakucha is a space where culture is a mentor. Pechakucha is a conversation where we all grow, adapt, and change one presentation at a time. Pechakucha is an opportunity to share in another's experience, which is a gateway drug to empathy and genuine acts of love. How did we get here? In January 2011, Ashley Pace and Sean Vasington hosted our first volume at the West Jackson Workshops at Sanders Pace Architecture. After Volume 3, Sean moved away, and Ashley was busy practicing architecture, teaching a design studio at the University of Tennessee, and raising 3 children under the age of 5. I asked Ashley, would you like some help? She said, please, and our team of curators was born. In these 13 years, we've been supported by more than 25 curators. We follow one rule. We meet once a month for an hour at a bar, which sounds like a great business model to me. We've hosted Pechakucha Night in 50 of them in 9 different venues, featuring over 450 presentations with somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 attendees. Our venues don't charge us for use, except for cleaning fees. These venue owners, they believe in this town hall, and we also purchase a few beverages from them. Give a shout out if you attended Pechakucha at any of the following venues: the West Jackson Workshops, Knoxville Museum of Art, Barley's, the Relics, the Standard, the Bijou Theater, the Square Room, in your living room virtually in 2020, and of course here at the Mill and Mine. All right, a unique element of Pechakucha Night is the poster. Each poster is created by a different artist, graphic designer, photographer, even architects. We provide no design constraints except for the logo and the fonts from the mothership. There's one design constraint: create something worth sharing with others. The posters are a presentation of their own. They each tell a story. We've had close to 50 Knoxvillians create posters with the same volunteer spirit as our curators. The posters create an archive. They're material reminders of this movement. They are art as well as artifacts. They are also exceptionally local. Pechakucha is only as good as our presenters. We have had 50 great volumes because we've had great presentations. Consider some of the topics. Paint spills as accidental art. An effort by UT architecture students and UT nursing students to bring clean water to rural Kentucky. Thoughts on creating a walkable city. Reflections on our urban wilderness. Catalyst Sports' effort to provide access to adventure for people with physical disabilities. A passenger train corridor for Knoxville. Art, architecture, doulas, the ampersand, dramaturgy, our farmers market, fashion, jewelry, robotics, historical postcards of Knoxville. The Bijou Theater, the Tennessee Theater, Beardsley Community Farms, the Tennessee Riverline Project, the architecture of the TVA dam system, old harp singing, canning, gardening, murals, bicycles, beer, distilling, coffee, flute making, photography, foraging, aging, health, personal organization, historic preservation, film, Goetz's kudzu control, metalwork, carpentry, wayfinding for the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City, including the subway, Big Ears, letterpress, graphic design, puppetry, sailing, tiki bar drinks, and a Unity bike ride across America. At the heart of Pechakucha is this community. Many of us have moved here from other places. Many of us grew up here. Most of us are passionate about the cultural life of this city. Knoxville's shortcomings are many, but as we live in this community, there is an authenticity that gets in your belly and becomes part of your DNA and drives us to create. I'm often asked, why Knoxville? One answer I offer is that it is an honest town. Kevin Bacon has his 6 degrees of separation. Knoxville has 2, maybe 3 degrees of separation. This close proximity lends itself to authenticity as well as our fair amount of audacity. We are neighbors, and tonight is part of the neighborhood. At the same time, there's an entrenched spirit in Knoxville that says, we can't do that. We looked into that earlier, and it just wasn't feasible. At those points, we were, in fact, just a good enough blue jean town. But this community pushes back. We say, give us art as a pathway to public safety. Give us nature as a cure to our splintered psyche. Give us authentic community as a salve for mental health. Start a civically minded newspaper in the 21st century. Make world-class kitchen utensils out of abandoned tractors. Give us nature to walk in and ride bikes through near our city core. Teach us how to design buildings for happier living. Tell us the story of the ampersand in a way that makes us fall in love. Nourish Knoxville by connecting farmers with markets and the rural parts of our county with the urban spaces. Start an ultimate Frisbee league. Establish a non-pretentious pay-what-you-can theater company in the heart of downtown. Launch a tool-sharing, multidisciplinary makerspace to create an able trade. This quarterly conversation is vital. Edna St. Vincent Millay wrote, upon this gifted age, in its dark hour, rains from the sky a meteoric shower of facts. They lie unquestioned, uncombined. Wisdom enough to leach us of our ill is daily spun, but there exists no loom to weave it into fabric. Pechakucha night in Knoxville has functioned as a loom. This night is our agora, our gathering place. This gathering place is our town hall. In each presentation and every conversation, this community is shaping the character of our town. I dare this community to do some good and then tell us about it in 20 images, 20 seconds per image, of course. Thank you.
And I'm Amber from IAMS Nature Center. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.
4, 3, 2, 1.
So let's talk about the metaphysicality of nature centers. What is a nature center? Why does a nature center exist? Nature centers have been part of our culture for approximately 60 years. And they have become important to us because we have evolved as a species with nature our entire, existence. However, in the past few years, that evolution, that connection has been slightly broken. Things weren't so bad back in the 1910s when the IAMS family first moved to the IAMS Nature Center, what is now IAMS Nature Center, and raised their family in connection with nature. Inside and outside, nature was always a part of it. However, after World War II, when people started moving into cities, into towns, into suburbia, we lost some of that connection. And the hippies and the garden club ladies saw it. Amazingly enough, hippies and garden club ladies were the reason that we have nature centers today. They founded them. So now there are nature centers all over the world. Here's a great example of some of my friends. I was presenting in Japan a few years ago with them, and these are folks that run nature centers there, and then on the right-hand side are my ride or die folks, nature center people in the U.S. that I have spent 20 years getting to know and working with. Nature centers, though, doesn't matter where you are in the world, nature centers do things in similar ways. These are great photos. One is of Kylie, who's one of our educators at IAMS, teaching a pond study class, and the other is a Japanese interpreter who's teaching in a nature center that's near Nagoya, Japan. All of this is because we see through a glass darkly. These days, we don't pay attention. The 20 seconds that you're looking at this image of this small plot of ground is about 19 seconds more than most of us ever look at any one thing. And so having the time to spend getting to know nature, getting to understand our role in it is critical. And a nature center provides that connection. A nature center holds its hand out and says, come with me. Let me take you to a portal. Let me take you to a doorway to show you worlds that you have really never seen before, even though they are in your backyard. We do this through something that we call interpretation. Most of us, when we think of interpretation, we think about, taking one language and making it understandable to people who are speaking a different language. However, interpretation in nature centers means the same thing. We're taking a language, often science, that is harder to understand, because if you've ever read a journal paper, you know that's some heady stuff. We interpret it. We help people to learn about it through hands-on activities, through doing citizen science, through interpreting the information to make it understandable and palatable so that we all find our way to it and find out how it can enrich our lives. As I said, nature centers are doorways. They're portals. They open a door to a world that is all around you, yet you never see. One of my all-time favorite stories is when I was teaching a birding class probably 20 plus years ago, and we were learning tufted titmice and chickadees. This is a tufted titmouse, and we had a great time. A couple of days later, I got a call from one of the participants, and he said, I am amazed. We have never had tufted titmice in my backyard before, and they're everywhere now. That is what we call opening a world. He now has them in his life. Nature centers also take things that are unusual or that are unknown to us and show them how they are commonplace and comfortable. We look at this insect here, which is an aquatic macroinvertebrate that lives in every pond, stream, and waterway in East Tennessee and around the world. And yet we don't know, many of us, that it turns into a dragonfly, that the nymph form turns into a winged animal that is a top predator in their world. That kind of revelation is beautiful, and it is life-altering, and that's one thing that nature centers do. And in doing that, they are actually taking something that we may fear. My grandmama couldn't stand a possum. I mean, Lord of mercy, they eat the chickens and everything. So a possum is an other than thing. It's something that we are worried about. But once you get to know them, instead of saying, oh, there it is, it's, oh, there you are. You're part of me. And that creates connection. Nature centers are all about connection. We are connecting you to the land and to nature and to each other. And I think we can all agree that right now, connection is incredibly important for all of us as humans. And so connection happens through learning together, through crawling through a cave system in hopes of finding a berry cave salamander, and then connecting with that berry cave salamander, and then wanting to protect that berry cave salamander. It's all about creating those moments for people that are magical, and magic that is an ordinary magic. And I love that part of it. So creating that sense of place for people also creates belonging. And belonging is something that as a species we want and crave heartily. We want to be amongst our people. And what's beautiful is that belonging creates this really beautiful way for you to experience through hiking, and this is our IAMS hiking club, and create a community. And sometimes a community with people that you may never have thought would be. This is Miss Gatlinburg, and this is Dr. Charmaine Mamontoff. Dr. Charmaine Mamontoff was the first female chemistry professor at University of Tennessee, and she still comes to IAMS now and does interpretation and education for people when they're there. Right? So, connection through experience, by learning, through experience, by giving. These are our weed warriors. They've been out removing invasive plants in our community. And the connection between these people is amazing. They get together every Saturday. I don't care if it's rain or shine, they're there. Because that connection's important. The connection to nature is because nature is eternal. It has always been a part of our lives. It should always be a part of our life because what has been should always be. Thank you very much.
You want to come stand over here? That's clearly for my son. No one ever claps like that for me. Awesome. I'm Kenneth Herring, and I'm the executive director at River and Rail Theater Company, and this is my son, Rain. Say hi. River and Rail is a nonprofit professional theater company with the following mission statement. Through the power and the beauty of theater, we seek to unite people from all backgrounds to experience and participate in stories that embody our shared humanity. Our home is the Old City Performing Arts Center, and this evening I'll be discussing our organization's performing arts label, which we have created as a hub for select local independent artists. Through these partnerships, we provide a rehearsal space, performance venue, marketing, advertising, branding support, and business services, and most importantly, a guaranteed payout for artists. The first artist on the label was Sean P. Turner, a local jazz artist who has been training students in the area for 2 decades. Sean called me in September 2022 and said he had a dream of taking his career to the next level and wanted to know if the Old City Performing Arts Center would be willing to invest in him. It was an easy yes. And in that moment, our label was born with the specific goal of providing a professional venue to artists who had typically performed in bars, restaurants, and breweries. Sean's first performance was a Christmas masterpiece with his amazing band, Pinky Ring. The show was properly entitled A Pinky Ring Christmas. They performed classic holiday songs from Nat King Cole and Ella Fitzgerald that made you feel all red and green on the inside. While it's been amazing watching Sean grow as a person and artist, the best part has been adding someone that I truly consider a friend of my life. This approach became the basis of what we would build and how we would support local artists. The next artist I'd like to tell you about is Rhea Carmen. Rhea is the reason that we have a performing arts label as opposed to a music label. I first met Rhea almost a decade ago. I was immediately moved by her presence, passion, and ability to make the audience feel something special. As soon as this idea came about, I knew I wanted Rhea to be a part of it. Rhea was Knoxville's Poet Laureate from 2020 to 2023. During that time, before and after, she has moved our community closer together with her words of positivity, encouragement, and love. Rhea told me that she has a dream of reading her poetry on the field at Neyland Stadium during the halftime of a UT football game. And come hell or high water, we're gonna make it happen. A huge part of what we do at the Performing Arts label is to be committed to the artists we work with to help them chase the dreams that they have to reach the highest heights possible. Rhea's first-person show, When a Teacher Breaks Free, was 20 years in the making and was an elegant, soulful mix of spoken word, theater, and music. Get over here. He thinks y'all came to watch him. I'll never forget the first time I met Keon. It was in March of 2020, or when I heard his music, excuse me. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic. A neighbor of mine who knew I loved music told me that she had a local artist I should listen to. I was nothing short of amazed. All I could think was, man, this kid is gonna be the next Kanye West. And not the new Kanye West. I'm talking about old school college dropout Kanye. So I did what any reasonable aspiring agent would do. I stalked him. Little did I know, I actually had several connections with both he and his mother, and in April of 22, she invited me to his local coming out party. Hip hop meets the arts, a black tie affair. It was unreal. The attention to detail, the thoughtfulness of the audience member, and of course the quality of the music were all I needed to know that this young man was going to the stars, and I needed to figure out how to get on his coattail. He can write, he can sing, he can rap, he can produce. Young man is cold. For the last 6 or 7 years, Mac Barton and I have gotten together for dinner and happy hour. I'm not sure why we keep meeting. Maybe we like each other's company. Early in 2023, we got together and I mentioned very excitedly that River and Rail was developing a performing arts label. He then told me something I didn't know about him, that he was a musical artist as well as an entrepreneur. He told me that he had just gotten a band together and they were playing the best music of his career. The band's name was Chameleus. I immediately asked him if he wanted to be a part of the label. Interestingly enough, this was the only act that I didn't carefully vet before offering a partnership. I hadn't even heard their music before, but my gut was telling me something was good, and I really just didn't think that they would suck. And I was right. They blessed the stage for a Halloween bash that came complete with great tunes and a costume contest with a prize from our friends at Brother Wolf. You can catch them back at the OC Pack on Saturday, May 18th. If you know Travis Tinch, you know a hustler. When I met Travis 2 years ago, I immediately saw the soul of a person I wanted to get to know better. I don't know anyone who's living their dream more passionately than Travis. At this point in time, I knew we needed more music at the Performing Arts Center, so I got on the Tinka Tinka groupie train and followed them wherever they played, including standing in the rain to watch them at World's Fair Park at the Food Fest in 2022. The moment I realized we were going to do something more formal with local independent artists, Travis and I hit Good Golly Tamale and worked out a deal. Since partnering with the label, Tinka Tinka has held 2 shows at the Performing Arts Center and brought in other local acts to both open and close their shows. Tinka Tinka has grown into a regional act and continues to display their creativity and versatility. And this year we're playing the Dogwood Arts Festival. You can catch them at the Old City Performing Arts Center on Friday, May the 31st. To this point, the gem of the performing arts label was our summer experience, which was held last August. This was an all-day performing arts festival that included all 5 acts playing on our stage. The amazing day began with tremendous support from our sponsors, Insure Fit RM, Southeast Bank, BioPet Laboratories, and Home Trust Bank. Because of their generosity, we were able to bring 25 artists to the stage to do what they love. The day began with a parade through the Old City, led by the great folks at Honkers and Bangers and Cattywampus. As a new venture, we had no idea what the attendance would be, but Knoxville was ready for something different. And to our genuine surprise and excitement, we had more than 300 people that attended the summer festival. I was real excited when I wrote that down earlier, and then I was standing up here next to Ashley Cass, and I was like, that number is real low. But let me get back to my presentation. Knoxville was ready for something different. Every artist that performed that day said they wanted to do it again, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We hope to see you in August for the 2nd annual summer experience and support artists as they continue to chase their dreams.
Y'all are gonna want to sit down for this one. Or lay down. It's all good. So. Let's talk about sex, baby. Much of human sexual history has been played out behind the bedroom door of history, private and concealed. The evidentiary basis is scant. Yet at Mabry Hazen House, we are fortunate to preserve a rich collection of stories and sources, opening the bedroom door for a tour called Rated R for Risque. A heart doesn't play by rules, but romantic love has its own demands. The who, what, when, and how of love and sex are modeled by the context and complexities of time and place, and terms are always subject to change. But where does most sex occur? It's privately in our own homes. But have you ever visited a historic house museum and actually discussed the topic of sex? We are uniquely positioned at Mabry Hazen House to discuss these ideas and these conventions because we preserve an entirely original family collection. So all the furniture there is original to the house, and we have amazing stories to go along with those resources. Rated R traces the universal themes of love across 3 generations and examines the evolving conventions, beliefs, and behaviors of sex and love around the turn of the 20th century. Opening with the long hemlines and high collars of Victorian era and running through the bobbed hair and short skirts of the flappers, we discuss how ideas for men and women gradually shifted or were thrust into new configurations. And all human societies, and even many animal ones, have always had courtship rituals to attract others or develop romantic bonds, but not all have had dating. The story of dating actually follows women out of the home into their jobs in the city where they mingled unsupervised with men. And dating does not enter the lexicon in what we understand until 1896. So we open with a courtship of Rush and Alice Hazen, true mid-Victorians. The doctrine of separate spheres dictated among mainstream Americans specific roles for men and women falling in love. Women were called upon by male visitors following a myriad of complicated rules. And the purpose of sex was procreation. And erotic desires were relegated and reserved only for marriage. Mutuality was the ideal for a couple, so as many aspects for marriage, a woman's desire depended upon the character and behavior of her husband. Our second date is with Lillian and Marie Hazen, Gibson girls, who were on the edge of decisive changes in sexual values. These women fell in and out of love when old and new existed in an uneasy balance. The separate spheres that underlaid sexual codes were disintegrating. Working class women left home for factories, offices, and retail establishments, while middle and upper class women entered college and pursued professional careers. Dating was a response to the pressures and opportunities of urban industrial America. Women whose lower wages barely covered necessities depended upon men's treats to participate in leisure activities. Upperclassmen were repulsed and then fascinated by such amusements. And so the great American middle-class institution of dating was born a working-class girl. And we showcase the artifacts to connect visitors to this shifting balance between old and new as these ideas change. And we conclude it with Evelyn Hazen, who was the youngest Hazen sister by 12 years. And she matured in an era when expectations and attitudes for women rapidly changed. Her mother's values were impressed upon her, but Evelyn's intelligence, ambition, and temperament made her unique among the Hazen women. In others' eyes, she could be a prudish flapper or a wild, wet blanket. In her own, she was meant for greatness. And economic explosions in the U.S. during the early 20th century enabled an expansion of consumer freedoms among middle-class Americans because the questions of basic living were seemingly answered by newfound prosperity. Leisure activities became a new form of mass consumption. And although its effects were uneven, the era of jazz was an age of pleasure, romantic and sexually. A new feminism emerged focused on individual expression and personal rebellion. The demand was a right to one's body, the ability to refuse advances and enter and enjoy sex without necessarily bearing children. A lust for life drew personal conversations into the public. It was 6 o'clock in America, bemoaned a St. Louis paper. Evelyn's story, though, is sadly one of an ill-fated love. She met Ralph here when they were in college and became engaged during the fervor of World War I. Ralph went off to fight, love bombed her, came back, convinced her that they should have sex, which was a taboo. Ralph then continued to give Evelyn excuses about marriage until 1932 when he broke up with her in a letter. Evelyn didn't take it well, so first she thought about murdering Ralph, then decided the better route was to sue him, and sued him for breach of promise to marry and seduction in 1934, and she won the trial. But it came at a cost of a reputation. But her story became the evidence that we needed. And while it's tragic, but it's also empowering. And it gave us the basis for the Rated R for Risque tours. And with additional research and the discovery of other artifacts to broaden the narrative, including an 1897 douche, I premiered the tour in March 2022. Again, few museums, especially historic houses, address the topic of sex. So this was built from a queer theory framework that encourages the examination of sexual norms in a given context and its fluidity. The majority of visitors are women, but of a diverse age range, often 3 generations, again in the house, trying to understand love and sex. The tour takes you into rooms where the rules of love were negotiated, and you stand right next to the furniture where sex acts occurred. Discussion is encouraged, and it opens up a conversation we rarely have with strangers. An understanding about the mores, the norms, and the etiquettes that we have about love and romance. Because the dominant meanings of love and sexuality have changed over the course of US history, from a primary association of heteronormative relationships intended for procreation to intimacy and individual personal pleasure. But a linear model of this repression to liberation is flawed. It's a jagged, uneven one that is still expressing itself in our lives today as we negotiate new ideas in LGBTQ worlds and with reproduction rights. But I ask you, will you go on a date with me? Will you come home with me? Get intimate with me? And maybe I'll open up. We'll talk about love, sex, and history, and I'll unleash an orgy of information. So, I hope you'll join me for Rated R Risque. We could talk about romance, courtship, and love in the Hazen household. Was that good? Because that was good for me.
All right. Hello. So I'm Ethan Fullwood. I'm the director over at Laurel Theater, but this talk is only tangentially related to that.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So this project appealed to me for aesthetic and professional, but also personal reasons. I grew up here in East Tennessee, but my father's family's from West Tennessee. And growing up, I was really connected to or became very interested in the traditional music of the region, which we think of as old time, but didn't really think about West Tennessee as having traditional music of any kind, nor actually did my father. When I talked to him about it, he didn't think they really had anything like that. So what is old time? Old time is it's a revivalist term for the rural string band music tradition out of which more modern genres like bluegrass and country arose in kind of the 1930s and 40s under the influence of commercialization and radio and Grand Ole Opry, all that sort of stuff. Old time has a few sort of salient characteristics. In addition to the fiddles and banjos, it's participatory music, so the jam is kind of the essential old time music experience, getting together with people playing. It's also closely associated with dance. You see a woman there, flat foot dancing, which is kind of it's individual percussive dance, but also square dancing. Most of this music that people play now was really developed as dance music. And it's really closely associated with Appalachia. So famous people like this who are Tommy Jarrell and them, who are famous Appalachian musicians. And I think a lot of people think of old time as Appalachian folk music. But we know that there's fiddles and banjos spread all over the place, and including the person who's going to come up, whose name is Cora Fish. So Cora Fish, there she is. Appropriate name because the banjo on her lap there, the head is made from a catfish skin that her husband caught and gave to her. She plays that banjo, or played it, in clawhammer, classic old-time style. There's some cool recordings of her on that front porch. She's from Bolivar, Tennessee, if you know where that is. It's Hardeman County, which is just 2 counties east of Memphis, so West Tennessee woman. So I was able to look at some of this stuff as part of the Tennessee Folklife Institute, the very first one that they had last summer, that Tennessee Arts Commission offered, and it was based in West Tennessee. And I did this project they taught us some folklife methods, documentation, archive work, and I wanted to look at history of old-time music in the region using archives and interviews. So we start with the very first sedimentary layer, 1928, the Weems String Band. So this band only recorded 2 sides for Columbia. They're some of the coolest, weirdest 1920s old-time music you'll ever hear, including because that guy's playing a bowed cello on the record. Don't really know how they learned their instruments, don't know what happened to them. Another important guy of the same era is Gus Cannon. So he's really part of the blues lineage. He's had the Gus Cannon Jug Band. But he played some traditional music. He also composed a lot of tunes that enter in the traditional repertoire, particularly in West Tennessee and in the Ozarks. They played a lot of rags and blues. A particularly important fiddler in McNairy County, where my father's from, is this guy Elvis Black, you can see there. And his anthem was a Gus Cannon tune called the Pig Ankle Strut. We know about Elvis Black because of the other fellow there, Little John. So this is the 1940s. This guy, Stanton Littlejohn, in his house had a recording system. He invited all these musicians over and just had them record in his living room. And he made this incredible record of old-time music, of local gospel bands. Also, Carl Perkins did his first recordings in that guy's living room. So the next big tranche of stuff comes from the Tennessee State Parks Folklife program, really incredible program they did in the late 70s, early 80s, where they sent folklorists out based in state parks and interviewed people and took photographs and did recordings, and they're all in the Tennessee State Library. So this is Irby Pope. So great story. So this woman is named Emma Tatum. She had a band in the 1940s called Ma Tatum and her Tater Bugs. They play traditional tunes, also kind of contemporary swing stuff. She came to believe in later life that the FBI was controlling her mind. Interesting lady. It's all in interviews that you can read from Tennessee State Library. They also supported folklife festivals. This is at Chickasaw State Park, and some of those went on for years. Chickasaw had square dances for a long time, and there's a few folklife festivals left in state parks, so they're not in West Tennessee. So there's also a luthier tradition that they captured. So you'll see Monroe Murphy coming up soon with a whole bunch of. Oh, this is an older thing, but that's a local. That is a local instrument, though. So that's Aubrey Taylor, but that's a local instrument. There's another important luthier tradition called Tennessee music boxes that was also documented by this fellow called Ellis Truitt. So these are some of the more contemporary stuff that's going on over there. So there's a long-running fiddlers convention in Holiday, Tennessee, that you can go to. That actually used to. They call it the West Tennessee State Championship. I was gonna have a Tennessee music box picture, but I didn't switch. Sorry. So this is, it's not all past tense though. So these folks are members of the Jackson Area Plectral Society, and I got to spend a lot of time jamming with them and did some interviews. So they meet every Thursday at the IHOP in Jackson, Tennessee, right off I-40, and they keep old-time music alive. So they jam for hours. I mean, some of the most indefatigable jammers I've ever seen. So you can see it's just like you saw in Mount Airy there in North Carolina. It's a jam, there's dancing. That woman's actually kin of mine, and her father was this man named Dudley Richard, who was a champion buck dancer and danced on his 100th birthday. There's a YouTube video of it. So that was kind of cool to find out. and you can see Jerry's filming me. He has a great YouTube channel where he puts all these jams up. So this woman is Marjorie Richard, and she is the daughter of Stanton Littlejohn, and she helped capture a lot, or helped preserve a lot of his recordings, and also started and maintained this organization. So there's all kinds of connections to the deep history of old-time music in the region in this one organization. And then there's also connections to bluegrass. So that guy fiddling there is named Wayne Gerald. So bluegrass and old time, sometimes they make friends. And so Wayne Gerald's mainly a bluegrass fiddler, but he was actually a bluegrass boy. He played with Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys for a little while before he decided he got tired of it and wanted to go back to Savannah. But he has a bluegrass convention in Savannah, Tennessee to this day. So this project's ongoing. There's a couple of directions I'd like to take it, particularly some album projects maybe, using some of those Tennessee State Library recordings and work with the Jackson Area Plectral Society. But it's been really interesting to observe more about the music close up, and particularly get at some of the cultural connections and cultural regionalization there. I think there's connections with the Ozarks that have been underexplored. And I would love to tell you that you could see the Jackson Area Plectral Society at the Jubilee Festival this year, but they're a little older and they had some health problems and we couldn't get them over here. But it's going to be a great festival anyway. So a lot of great traditional music and dance at the Laurel Theater in Fort Sanders neighborhood. So you should all come out March 15th and 16th.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I want to thank, before we start, I want to thank my close colleague, Paul James, for helping me with the technological stuff I'm really bad at. But I'm grateful to be here. It's a wonderful, it really is a wonderful thing to happen. And as Matthew said, this is one of the biggest surprises of the 21st century to me, is that hundreds of people would come out for a slideshow. This is great. But all right.
4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. We routinely refer to historic downtown Knoxville, but what's it historic for? Has Knoxville made a difference in the world? That's one of the central challenges of my organization, the Knoxville History Project. We believe the city has made a difference in hundreds of ways, but there are a few high points. One is called the Knoxville Gazette. It was before we had a school or a church or a municipal government in Knoxville, we had a newspaper. Founded by a printer from Boston in 1791, the Knoxville Gazette was the first newspaper in Tennessee and in this part of the frontier. His first priority, George Ralston's first priority, was to print in its entirety the most controversial and influential political document of the 1790s, and that was Thomas Paine's The Rights of Man. In early 1796, 55 territorial delegates met in Knoxville for a constitutional convention that founded the state of Tennessee. The document was completed and was remarkable in several ways. Unlike most state constitutions, it did not demand either racial or property ownership qualifications for voting rights. Unfortunately, those racial restrictions came in decades later, but as is often the case, things got better before they got worse, before they got better. The School for the Deaf is something we overlook in history often, but this was the 8th deaf school in America that was established. You might recognize that that's the LMU law school now. But railroads arrived in the 1850s, and Knoxville was born anew with the arrival of railroads. There were dozens of trains every day, passenger trains and freight trains that came, and that changed everything. They enabled an unusual diversity of industry, iron, coal, machinery, textiles, furniture, including the flour also, the White Lily, the J.L.N. Smith Company, which you can see out the front door of this building. Its most famous product was White Lily, which was made there for 120 years, invented there and made there for 120 years. They sold flour as far away as Cuba in their heyday 100 years ago. But also marble. You recognize the Candora Marble Building, 1923 Charlie Barber Building. A lot of the marble happened in South Knoxville, and we're working on a South Knoxville book that deals with marble a great deal. But this became known as the Marble City after 1876. But Parson Brownlow is a fascinating character. He's about 3 blocks away from here, by the way, that grave. But he's an extremely complicated figure, a guy who had been a pro-slavery journalist before the Civil War. War, became a hardcore civil rights governor who did astonishing things, gave black men their right to vote in Tennessee before they could vote in most states in America. And here we are in Market Square. This is relevant because back in the back of that picture is the City Hall, where one of the first biracial city governments in America met in 1869. When two black men were elected to city council there. But there should be a plaque, I think, there for that. Anyway, Knoxville College is another thing. In 1876, one of the first important black colleges in the South, founded it was a place. Thousands of people got degrees there and took them to other states and big cities. But it was known in the day for all the major figures who spoke there, including W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass. But anyway, George Barber in the Victorian houses. He was from the Chicago area. Moved here in the 1880s. The highest density of his work is here in Knoxville at Park Ridge, but his work is well known and celebrated as far away as Oregon, so where he has mansions there. Nicholson Art League, founded around 1900 with painters like Lloyd Branson, Charles Crouch, and especially Catherine Wiley, the Impressionist, who was at Star. This is one of our art rafts. We have these more than 30 of these around downtown, but this is one of her works. It was kind of a street museum that we're creating, and this is also a guy that we celebrated with our art rafts, Buford Delaney, who's connected to the Nicholson Art League because some of the members of the Nicholson Art League knew this kid was a genius that they met, and they helped nurture him, helped train him, and actually financially helped him to study up north, and he became a major figure in abstract art. With his shows have been Delaney shows in New York and Paris. But also the National Conservation Exposition, 1913, the third big national fair at Chilhowee Park, was almost on the scale of a World's Fair. But this was it was the first exposition in world history dedicated to the idea of conservation of our natural resources. And that is not a trivial distinction because some of the people, including David Chapman, who's in the foreground of this picture, were 10 years later involved in an effort to make a permanent thing called the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And we're going to be celebrating that this summer, the centennial of the park movement, including Harvey Broom and Jim Thompson, people like that who were in that picture. But this is a major thing. The Tennessee Valley Authority happened to kind of overlap with a lot of this, and this was something completely unexpected in 1933, part of the New Deal. It earned national headlines for flood control and energy production, but it also brought hundreds of progressives to Knoxville, including artists, conservationists, and architects, including Alfred Klaus, a revolutionary modernist who came here and created Little Switzerland, which has been called the first international-style housing development in America. Music, often overlooked at the time, musical innovators in blues, jazz, and country music were playing music in the Knoxville streets and on live radio. Roy Acuff, in particular, revolutionized country music in the 1930s. And I'm sorry, Clell Summey was the guy that introduced the dobro to popular music and here in Knoxville. The the word dumpster entered the English language here in downtown Knoxville in late 1936. When inventor George Dempster placed 4 of them in a downtown alley to see what would happen, and they all filled up with trash very quickly. And they were a success, and they have been globally ever since. Literature, with so much going on often behind the scenes, it may not be surprising that Knoxville has bred an eclectic variety of literature. Frances Osbornette, Nikki Giovanni, who's been on this stage, James Agee, the late Cormac McCarthy, and we did that literary guide, we distributed thousands of those. Finally, what will be remembered from our era? I worked at the World's Fair, but it seems different and maybe more important in hindsight. I wonder how many other things might be like that. It's likely that other recent narratives, like those of the urban wilderness and big ears, will be remembered as significant too. But anyway, our perceptions constantly change, and it's hard to know what people in the future will know of our time, but we're doing our best to collect what we can for the historians of the future. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna talk about history tonight, and it's not fair to have me go after Jack when I do that. He stole my thunder a little bit.
3, 2, 1.
As architects, we insert ourselves into a longer series of storylines playing out in the places where we work. And tonight I want to share a few stories about Knoxville, about the past that we collectively inherit and how this history shapes the city that we know today and how it also has defined the identity of this place. The Knoxville that we kind of recognize started to take shape in the early part, probably around the turn of the last century. But a lot of things were happening nationally around the 1930s that really had an impact on Knoxville and really defined the identity of the city and also the region. The Tennessee Valley Authority was formed in 1933, and over the first 10 years or so, they built 16 hydroelectric dams, which harnessed the power of the Tennessee River and its tributaries, with iconic and important dam projects that brought power and progress to the residents of the Tennessee Valley. And that same year, the Civilian Conservation Corps was founded, and it was championed by a group from Knoxville. And some of the first recruits were sent to a new project, which was the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, dedicated by FDR in 1940. And it's no coincidence that these two programs paralleled one another because they were both two pillars of FDR's New Deal. Massive civic construction projects were also a tool the federal government used to pull us out of the Great Depression, and the Tennessee Valley played a big role in this as well. Tennessee marble was quarried in the valley, and factories in and around Knoxville provided the labor that shaped the material that clad many of these iconic buildings. But by the second half of the 20th century, industry started to leave, and we were left with a lot of places that look like this. Post-industrial sites that had been overtaken by nature. They were ruins from a past era. And it started to define our identity of these places in a really bad way. In places like South Knoxville, where some of these sites are now being combined into something that we all know now as Knoxville's urban wilderness. And it's given us a chance to really change the narrative and create a new identity for these types of places. And so tonight, Amber talked a little bit about IAMS. I'm going to focus a little bit further west from that in places like Augusta Quarry. Augusta Quarry is a really beautiful place if you haven't been there. It's also maybe one of the most diverse places in Knoxville and probably one of the most dangerous places in Knoxville at times. And Augusta Quarry is something that we've been working on as a project for a while. It's got a great, fascinating history. As you can see from this map from Orlando Poe, this is during the 1863 siege of Knoxville. The history goes back to the Civil War times when a hill that was once home to Union forts started being mined as a quarry in the 1930s. By the 1970s, it started to fill with water when City Quarry was closed. So the projects that we've been working on, the first phase was completed in 2020, and current phase under construction right now handles access to the water, safety improvements around the perimeter of the quarry, and also a number of buildings up at the original quarry ramp. So it was part of a string of industrial sites in this part of South Knoxville. And if you followed the train line down, you'd pass the Vestal Lumber Company, which was shaping some of the logs that were coming from what would become this Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And then the Candor Marble Company was shaping and shipping stone all around the country. So in the 1920s, they built this showroom building to showcase the types of material they could get, and also the skill of the craftsmen who were working next door. But by the 1990s, it had shut down and fallen into disrepair until a group of preservation-minded individuals banded together to save this important piece of Knoxville history. And it's now home to TriStar Arts, which is a group that promotes and supports Tennessee contemporary artists. It's got subsidized local artist studios. It's got a gallery that's open to the public, and it really serves a civic role in this part of Knoxville. And it's really restored a sense of pride, I think, to the Vestal community. And just up the road from there, you have another site that has its roots in the same era. The TVA employees were some of the first residents of the eclectic log cabins at Log Haven, which were built by Missy Thompson in the 1930s. And by the mid-2000s or so, it was slated to be demolished to become student housing project. And now it's home to a multidisciplinary artist residency at Log Haven, which brings cross-cultural exchange to Knoxville, and really further, with national artists visiting, and it really further solidifies this part of Knoxville as a hub of arts and culture. And just one more story, if you move a little bit further east, another one that has roots in the 1930s. In 1938, the Knoxville Housing Authority received a grant for a slum removal project, which began our urban renewal era officially in Knoxville. 20 years later, a road that would become James White Parkway was part of another urban renewal project. Under the leadership of Mayor Rogero, this road, which was a bypass to the Smoky Mountains, was officially abandoned as a project in 2016. And our design team has been working with the city to create a new vision for the northbound lanes, which includes a 2.2-mile linear park and greenway connecting the communities of East Knoxville and downtown to amenities in South Knoxville, like the bike trails and bike park at Baker Creek Preserve. And this has really been an economic development tool in Knoxville as well, which you can see once a year during AMBC's Fall Festival, when people come to a part of Knoxville that was slated to become an extension of a 4-lane highway. So in 2 weeks, we'll have the opening of the first of 2 pavilions, ribbon cutting, at Baker Creek Preserve. And in land that was formerly TDOT right-of-way, we now have resources like the world-class biking trails, bike park, pump tracks, playgrounds, and now with the opening of this building, we'll have bathrooms. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with what's happening. I think with the type of investment and the kind of momentum that's happening in this part of the city, I just hope that we, with these projects, we honor the legacy of our past while also continuing to provide greater connectivity and resources and investment into historically underserved parts of our city. Thank you.
Hello, Pechakucha. Is that how you pronounce it? First of all, before we get started, I want to thank my team, Casey Fox, Morgan Fleming, Holly Rainey, Donna Mitchell. They put together this slideshow. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. So, is there a countdown? I get 2 countdowns. Okay, I love this. One of the world's greatest music bashes, says the New York Times. You know, you really can't buy that. But I'm here to talk about that. You know, what's going on here? Why big ears? Why Knoxville? And, you know, really just what is big ears anyway? I mean, we all know it's a music festival, but a lot of people tell me it's really different from most music festivals. So I want to think a little bit tonight about exactly how it is different, why it's different. I'm even going to put forth perhaps a slightly pretentious proposition, which is that Big Ears is not just a music festival, but it's also an idea festival. And the ideas happen to be cloaked in music. And it uses music as a vehicle to explore these ideas, the world around us, our cultures, our hopes and dreams. That's Marshall Allen, by the way. He's going to be 100 years old this May. He was here for his 99th birthday with the Sun Ra Orchestra last year. I love that photo. So he used to come to Ella Garouz all the time, too, so we go a long way back. But, you know, the festival tries to explore the world around us, our cultures, our hopes and dreams, our emotions, our experiences that are at the heart of what it really means to be human. Our culture is a melting pot of these experiences, and I like to think of Big Ears as being somewhat organized to reflect that melting pot. But first, I want to get something out of the way. Everybody wants to talk about numbers. Everybody wants the metrics, the data. What's the score? How you doing? So let's just talk about this really quickly for a minute. Each year, attendance at Big Ears over the 11 years of the festival has grown about 15 or 20% annually. That's until COVID. After COVID, we took huge leaps. And you know, in 2022 and 2023, we literally doubled the attendance and the size of the festival from 2019. This year, more than 32,000 visitors attended the 4-day weekend. That's just over 8,000 a day. They came from 48 states, 24 countries. The economic impact was estimated at $36.1 million in 2022. We grew 52% the next year in 2023, and we're soon declaring a sellout at those numbers for this year because we didn't want to grow anymore. These metrics are really helpful. They're very informative, but they're just a tiny little sliver of the actual story. They capture some of the what, but none of the why. Why are people coming from all over the world? Why are they devoting so much time, energy, effort, and resources to come to Knoxville to attend Big Ears? And then there's the what if factor. I think metrics are pretty useless when it comes to thinking about what if, what could be. That requires imagination, intuition, a willingness to explore, an appetite for risk. A year and a half ago, actually, the Knoxville Chamber of Commerce proclaimed that we had entered a new era, the age of imagination, which is transforming our communities and determining our prospects and possibilities for future prosperity. They also warned that Knoxville was not prepared to embrace this new age fully, that steps needed to be taken. I started thinking, what does this really mean? How do you nurture qualities like imagination in a community? There was, of course, talk about education. Most of that centered on math, technology, engineering. Not really that much was said about music, art, literature, philosophy, history, science, culture, those fields where curiosity, exploration, and developing one's capacity to imagine are also fundamental in the process of learning. I recently read an interview with a prominent Silicon Valley CEO who said that he was more interested in employees who were well-grounded in the liberal arts than in those with engineering and tech backgrounds, especially when it came to leadership. He noted that the specific skills are often subject to change, and he was looking for people who had diverse interests, well-rounded knowledge. As he put it, he wanted people who had learned how to learn and who were driven by curiosity and the imagination. If nothing else, Big Ears was a product of the imagination. There were no metrics. There was no data that provided the assurance that this was a good idea. It grew slowly, organically. Many people were unconvinced. It was a product that had many of the same qualities of curiosity, exploration, discovery, openness to the new and the unexpected, and the embrace of an expanded sense of community, which are all of the values that I hope the festival embodies and nurtures today. So let's jump back into that melting pot. Some stories from the melting pot. Africans brought their music to the New World centuries ago, mostly involuntarily. Their singing, their drums, their lutes, stringed instruments, like the one that we call the banjo. And some started to play European instruments. They even started playing in orchestras in the 1800s and singing on stage. By the mid-1800s and into the late 1800s, Havana, Cuba, was one of the centers of classical music and especially opera in the New World. Early in the last century, I'm way behind, I can tell. Early in the last century, as a teenager playing piano in the bordellos of New Orleans, Jelly Roll Morton played the new boogie-woogie and ragtime tunes while weaving in Chopin and even some opera. He loved Puccini, and he laid the foundation for what we now call jazz. Up the Mississippi River, can I go on? I'm sorry. Up the Mississippi River along the Delta, bluesmen like Robert Johnson and Muddy Waters and the gospel and spiritual music that came out of the black churches inspired Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash, and then the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton created an entire musical revolution that came back to the States, sometimes with a British accent. A young boy living in New York City in the late 60s heard the great banjo pioneer Earl Scruggs on a TV show called Beverly Hillbillies and was hooked for life. Bela Fleck became one of the greatest banjo players in the world, taking the instrument into the concert halls with Yo-Yo Ma, with symphonies, and also back to Africa to explore its roots. This goes on and on. Make no mistake, the melting pot is alive. Rhiannon Giddens, John Batiste, Herbie Hancock, they're all part of the melting pot. They're all giving back to the melting pot, providing inspiration. Big Ears opens 2 weeks from tonight. Imagine that. I hope to see you around.
I'm here to work on my type 5. Can you hear me in the back?
3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. My name's Dr. Warren Doctor. I'm the president and CEO of the East Tennessee Historical Society, and I'm here to do 3 things tonight. One's to tell you a little bit about me, one's to tell you a little bit about the society, and one is to tell you a little bit about Tennessee with my charm and wit and so forth. That went a little bit quicker than I had timed it, so I'll do some tap dancing while we're waiting on the slide. Oh, there we go, that's me. So I grew up in East Tennessee. I grew up in Granger County, spent a lot of time in Knoxville, tomatoes, right? I loved history so much. I learned about history here in Knoxville. I went to UT, did my undergraduate work, and then I went overseas to Great Britain, where I got my PhD. And eventually came home. And I'm happy to say we have a museum here in Knoxville about the East Tennessee, the East Tennessee History Center. We're right across the street from the Tennessee Theater, and we service, our mission is to preserve, promote, and interpret history in all 35 counties of East Tennessee. So we do work there, and we have really cool stuff like Davy Crockett's rifle. This is also one of the things we do is we help historic preservation of homes. We help sort of facilitate people. This is a place in Hamblin County called Rural Mount, which was built in the 1790s. So we have helped various developers, and I'm happy to say that this right now currently is being saved in 9 acres that it sits on, and was built by a figure named Alexander Outlaw. We also have an amazing kids gallery. Education is central to our mission. We work with lots of education programs, and we have lots of education for kids, like in the History Center, in the History Headquarters. But we also have education for adults in genealogy. We have loads of genealogical programs, so if you're interested in genealogy, you should come by. We also have our brown bag lectures, which is a staple thing that we run. And we have lots of fun feature galleries that come in. For instance, we did one on the history of Mountain Dew, which was a hillbilly history of Mountain Dew. And we also did one on the history of Knoxville in black and white, which was about Jim Crow in Knoxville during that era. We have 3 major publications. One is called Newsline, which has my beautiful face on it. One is called the Journal of East Tennessee History, which is the flagship academic journal, I think, in Tennessee. And it's been published, we published it since 1929. And we also run Tennessee Ancestors, which has been published since 1978, which is our genealogical program. The main thing that we like to get across here, and this is in the main feature gallery, Voices of the Land, is that history is fun. You can see us taking selfies here, trying to jump up. I mean, the end of the day, the thing about history is being a good historian is being a good storyteller and making it fun for people, which I'm not doing right now, but I'm trying very hard. Now, the final thing I'm going to leave you with, because I am a historian and there will be a quiz, is the etymology of Tennessee. We know a lot about the state, but what about the word itself? And this, I think, is a very interesting thing. So the etymology of Tennessee starts in many ways in Spain with the exploration of Hernando de Soto. And he came across into Tennessee during the 1540s. And when he did, he encountered a group of people called the Yuchi, who were a Native American tribe that lived probably up around Newport and further afield up in the northeast of Tennessee. But Hernando was the first one to come, but the first person to really trade and spend time with him was a man named Captain Juan Pardo. He was a Spanish conquistador, and he actually asked the Yuchi people what this area was called, and they said the land here was called Tenasque, which is a Yuchi word. And so this is sort of the foundational text. Now, what's really interesting is about 100 years later, the French start showing up into Tennessee. The French show up from West Tennessee. You have explorers Jacques Marquette and Louis Gillet, and they start moving, fur trappers and so forth, start moving towards East Tennessee from the west. But what's remarkable is in the same year, 1673, the British start moving down in trading. A man named James Needham and Abraham Wood start trading with the Cherokee, because by this point the Yuchi had kind of moved away and moved on. And eventually British traders make their way down to Monroe County. And in Monroe County, they asked the Cherokee what this area was called, and they said Tennessee. And so one of the interesting things about how this is pronounced is, well, where did the spelling of it come from? Well, the spelling came from a man named James Glenn, who was a colonial governor of South Carolina, who asked Henry Timberlake and others to explore the area, and he spelled it Tennessee. And this was so popular that it remained the spelling of Tennessee all the way to the state's constitution in 1796. And it was used by Henry Timberlake in his memoirs, The Drafted Cherokee County, because he wanted to garner favor with the governor. So that's why we spell it the way we do. We still don't know exactly what the word means. Now, there have been lots of people who've studied what the word means, and this is one of the most famous ones. His name was James Mooney. He was an ethnographer around the 1900s. And James Mooney said that because in many ways it was a Yuchi word that the Cherokee had sort of taken, that there was no way that the original meaning was lost. And this is a really remarkable thing, because very recently there have been studies done on the Yuchi language. The Yuchi language, the Yuchi tribe now live as a part of the Greek Confederation in Oklahoma. And there's a lot of studies because it was considered a linguistic isolate. So it's completely unlike any other language. There's been loads of real interesting studies that have been taking place, and we've been doing a lot of work on this. And so there are many possible meanings for the word Tennessee or Tenasque. One of them is where the brother waters meet, where the waters meet the fork in the river. But the one that I think is most interesting, the one that I choose to think about, my timing's not right, is meeting place. Because if you think of all the cultures I just mentioned, the Yuchi, the Cherokee, the Spanish, the French, the British, all of those things met in East Tennessee. And this really makes East Tennessee one of the most unique historical places in all the world, and I mean that truly. And so that's something I think we have to take a lot of care to think about. And so if you're interested in meeting with your history, I encourage you to come up to the museum and join the society, and we'll have a good time. Thank you so much.
I'm not starting yet. Hello, everybody. I'm giving you a quick hello because, hello everyone, there we go. Because I have had the absolute honor of standing on the very first Pechakucha stage at those West Jackson workshops. And it was not a stage, it was a concrete floor. I've had the absolute honor of sharing this Pechakucha stage with my wife, Robin, in the back. What's up? And I have had the absolute honor of sharing this stage in front of and with so many of you. And tonight, I am honored to share that maybe they just weren't thinking through this, but I've been honored to join the Pechakucha volunteer team. So, 50 times, y'all. Before we head into Disco Town, can we give this crew a shout out? Thank you.
Let's go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
11 years. Thousands of entrepreneurs, thousands of connections, $160 million raised, thousands of founders with big ideas, and you'll probably recognize a few. The Knoxville Entrepreneur Center is a nonprofit dedicated to changing lives through entrepreneurship. And like our friend Paris Woodhull says, art and entrepreneurship is for daredevils. Artists, scientists, technologists, makers. We are change makers. We are risk takers. We are daredevils. We are Makers City daredevils. And the KEC sits as a center of gravity. Without being a center of attention in the middle of a lively entrepreneur ecosystem we'll call the Innovate 65, because that's what you do. From the Oak Ridge National Lab to the University of Tennessee to Real Good Kitchen and Centro Hispano. There are resources, and they are there for you. We are supported by an organization called Launch Tennessee. And our friends at the city of Knoxville, among many others in the private sector. If that is of interest, I will speak to you after this. Our goal, and the goal of the 8 entrepreneur centers around the state, is to help people with big ideas become founders with businesses. And y'all, as a fellow daredevil and longtime entrepreneur, this is the longest job I've ever had, right? My highlights include hosting the Big Ideas Welcome podcast and getting to talk strategy with absolute bosses like Hannah Lee. And I get to work with the best crew of all time, right? There's amazing people in our community, legends like Eugenia Almeida, who came to this country 25 years ago, no English, 4 kids, and one big dream. She now employs over 10 people, recent immigrants themselves, and leaders like Darren Burrell, an Air Force veteran and now venture capitalist who supports veteran-owned businesses across the United States. I get to spend all day with smart people. I get to be the dumbest guy in the room. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that I'm always learning. I'm learning from top creators, from scientists, from inventors, from people like Lily Tinch, right in the center there. People that encourage me and make me grow. Like Three Roots Capital founder Grady Vanderhoofen. He likes to say that the community thrives when the economy thrives. And I'm going to tell you right now, the economy thrives on entrepreneurs. That's why the KEC, we focus on 3 big things: capital, capabilities, and connections. Capital is in, man, money is tough. It's tough to make, it's tough to get, and it's tough to save. And without access to that money, our most innovative and promising ideas never reach their full potential. And I think we can all agree we want John and Kate from Primo and Famika Elliott from the Lotus program to reach their full potential. And I know it looks like from these photos, all we do is hand out quote unquote big checks, but I assure you it is more than that. It's about capital intelligence. It's about accessibility, it's about revenue, it's about customers, banking, equity. It's about getting founders capital ready. And knowledge is power. And actively sharing that knowledge is power multiplied, thanks to dedicated servant leaders like CPA Nikki Elliott. Knowledge makes us all more creative, more prepared, more economically resilient, and it prepares our founders to become leaders. Our Maker City artists, our technology startups, they've all got these common hurdles. It's the finance, it's the marketing, it's the sales, it's the accounting. It's every entrepreneur I've ever met, including myself, that has the 3 a.m. Thursday night, how am I going to make payroll in the morning story? But nobody does this alone. That's why we put so much emphasis on connections, on mentorship. It's magic when first-time entrepreneurs like Jaleria Rivera become seasoned mentors and community leaders themselves. We're proud to connect and amplify our entrepreneurs, bringing entrepreneurs together to sometimes literally set the stage for creative collisions, innovation, and impact. And if you want to see impact, go to madeforknoxville.com. Meet 300 of the most impactful leaders that this region has ever known, or talk to Candace Troutman, the powerhouse leader of our 100 Knoxville program. Capital, capabilities, connection. Knoxville, Tennessee is better known as the Maker City. It is the place to create and make a living doing what you love. And don't we all love to create wherever you are in your founder journey? If you're just getting started, or if you're all the way to rocket-fueled growth, hey, we got you. From Business 101 and 201 and growth programs, our women in entrepreneurship community, I think, has almost 3,000 members, and that's a strong thanks to champions like Lisa Skinner, who make these things happen. And I gotta talk about what's the big idea. It was this past weekend. It's our annual pitch competition. 6 founders, 6 mentor team, 48 hours, 10 grand on the line at a packed house at Scruffy City Hall. Congrats to everyone, and especially the night's big winner, Human AI. all of this takes a founder's mentality. And if you follow me, that founder's mentality is a grit, a determination, a focus on forward momentum like none other. Like founders Courtney Jones and Rico Hopewell. They create what's next, not just what's now. By becoming a supporter, a mentor in the KEC community, or becoming an entrepreneur yourself, you are joining these ranks. So I would love it if you scanned this and followed us on our newsletter or any of our amazing social media accounts or web addresses. KEC is a place where big, audacious ideas are welcome, where Maker City daredevils like Paris Woodhull and Jade Adams and Ed Rotman and Bailey Foster create. It's a place where they're welcome, and it is a place where you are welcome. Now, Knoxville, let's get to work.
All right. Thank you to everybody coming out for our 50th. Our next volume is going to be on August the 16th. May 15th. May 16th. Our next volume is going to be on May 16th. And we're going to be doing it in partnership with Knox Heritage. So they're going to help us curate it together. So thank you all for coming. We are going to clear out these chairs and have a silent disco. Your headphones are ready to go if you want to turn them on.